+1. We'll reconvene the meeting, please. And if I could have somebody please move, we received the Director of Works report item 351, Councillor Peoples and Councillor Plum. Vlad, would you like to lead us through something here? Direct us to something?
There's 3 categories there: TMR, new landfill, new upgrade, sewer upgrade, flood damage. TMR construction, we're chugging along there. We've moved down to the lower end, we've combined teams, and looks like we're doing okay there now. Pushing it along, we should have a seal on it. I think it's booked in for Monday, Tuesday for the side track, so that's on track. Landfill, I'm quite happy with that. I think we've got a photo there. Debbie, sorry. It's the landing pad that's already down. There'll be sealing either over the weekend or Monday as well. So that's happening. Construction bins are in progress. So the time frame that I'm looking at opening up is before Christmas, and the leachate tank is all signed off on as well. So that's the prepared base. I took that photo yesterday. Sewer upgrade, that's moving along nicely. Constant conversation with carbon and water. Some instances a daily, sometimes twice a day, just to make sure that everything's on schedule. A few things that have been ordered and are on their way. There'll be a delivery next week of some of the components. We're starting work on the base of the tank, the blinding for one of the tanks that are going to be built by Bega Tanks. They're in New South Wales. We're just trying to work out the COVID situation and everything else, but we're doing all the preliminary works in-house, so just save a little bit of money there as well. Flood damage, we did speak about that. I've been meaning to catch up with QRA for the past 6 weeks or so. There is a tentative time next week booked in to meet up with QRA and just to get our heads around what is happening on the ground. That's all from me.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I want to ask a question, but you pull me up if you have to, please. The work on, I can't think of the name of the little creek, about 8 or 10 kilometres on the Muttaburra side of Aramac. There's a, sorry? Belltopper Creek. When would you expect that job to be completed or started?
Yeah. Belltopper is awarded. My discussions in relation to that contract is that they'll be starting it very, very shortly. And they're supposed to be finished by end of November, I believe. I can get that. I can get back to you. There have been issues in relation to stopping the water.
That's another part of my question. Is there a bore or something running into this? Yes. That water there, I've seen the other day, I went there.
Yeah.
That water issue is a problem.
Yeah. Discussions are already in place in relation to stopping it, and we will be stopping that water. And that's part of our thing to do, to stop that, so slow the water down so the contractor can come in and do the work. I think this has been going back a couple of years, or last year or something like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's programmed to be done, and it's awarded.
I realise it's been awarded, but I just wondering how long, because it only needs another big storm up there, and there'll be no road level.
I've been in talks with GBA in relation to that project, and I have had discussions with the hierarchy up at Aramac as well, just to make sure that we are on track.
Thank you.
Further questions? Melinda, did you have a question?
No, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. No? You just hurt yourself, you strike back, you have to strike one. Alrighty, we can move on.
Just a vote, please.
Oh, all in favour of receiving the report? 7-0. 361, Information Report Alpha Jericho. Can I have somebody move we receive that report, please? Councillor Plum, seconder. Councillor Peoples, those in favour? 7-0. Anything here to report or expand upon, Damien?
Probably just the only thing, Mr. Mayor, was the drive for the drought. They were impressed with their local businesses for the lunch, and then also they were very impressed with Jericho with the driving and
Very good. Questions for Damien?
Also, I just mentioned, I do want to mention yesterday's Damien, the bushfire seminar.
yeah, Mr. Mayor, that was very impressive. It was the QFS commissioner and also the assistant commissioner there. So just a lot of the presenters that were there on the teams that we had, and yeah, that was very well organised. Went for roughly so for 3 hours. Paula was at that one as well, and just some of the changes, and I guess starting to get ready now for the bushfires side of it. So the BOM also did a mission there, and they were sort of expecting. They didn't sort of mention any further west from Bark on that. Sort of, but they were going more for the fires around Mackay and into Yeppoon and those areas there from Emerald up that way. So, but no, very informative anyway.
It echoes my concerns as well. I probably wouldn't be too worried about around Rockhampton. Poor buggers haven't had enough rain to grow anything, but certainly a worry in north of Emerald, north Alpha, Tambo really would be there. You know, east of about here, probably east of about the Alice River really is some substantial fuel load, so that's good. Report we received, Aramac Monaborough. Councillor Plum, Councillor Rogers, those in favour, 6-0. Paula, what do you want to lead us through here before we go to questions?
Just to add to that QFES thing too, one of the things that they wanted the local governments to do is when they're slashing the roads to, I think they slash 3 metres off the road, they're asking if we would slash 5 metres just to get that barrier, because there is so much grass out there at the moment.
Can we have a look at what implications that would have for RMPC, because that's effectively a 25% increase, so can we, because that's what pays for it, so can we have a look whether there's enough, and if not, we might be able to ask for a special consideration from TMR for if QFS, if another agency's asked for us to increase that. I'm happy to comply, but I'm also happy for someone else to pay for it.
Yeah, and they spoke about, it's a landholder's responsibility really to maintain their areas, and so we're just going to put a little bit of a snippet thing in the bottom rail for our landholders, just to make them aware of what they can do to assist.
So in that, could you draw attention, Paul, that perhaps I'm doing it in my piece in the Gazette, just ask people that are responsible for the maintenance of their firefighting equipment to do a once-over, so pumps and tanks, like in some cases these pumps and tanks will have sat in the shed or worse, out in the weather, as a lot do, and you know, seals will be buggered, spark plugs not functioning, just simple things. So maybe just a gentle reminder for them to do a bit of preventative maintenance on their firefighting equipment, especially their petrol motors.
That might be ideal to put in the Galloway Gazette as well.
Might be a good thing generally. Yeah.
No, it's good to see that we've had a bit of interest in the bakery house and land in Aramac and Muddaborough, so that's good. Well, that closes in the next couple of days, so we'll see how that goes. Everything else is travelling along smoothly.
How did the risk assessment of the office staff's work environment go?
Good. Yeah, they all participated in it, so, and different people see different things, so that's always interesting.
Very good. Councillors?
Just a comment, Mr Mayor, good to see a business in Aramac and Muddaborough popping up.
Dear Mr Mayor, I would like to add to that comment of Councillor Arthur's. That little business in Muddaborough, happened to go in there on Saturday when we're over there. That is exceptional. And it looks very different to what I remember the shop to be. It doesn't look as big anymore. But yeah, it is. It looks really good. Yeah. So it's nice.
Very
to
good.
see.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Councillor Arthur. No further questions? That is just part of the report, is it not? Righto. 372, if someone could invite Councillor Peoples to rejoin us, please. Oh, one thing I did note, that's fine for Councillor to come back, sorry, one thing I did note, because it is the same report, one of the higher, if not the highest, in the Central West, like in the rapid group of dog scalps being returned in the Victorian area. It's pretty well static with Witten at 350, but I would suggest that Witten are probably not all Witten Shires because they're $100 a scalp, so they'd be copying a fair few from Cloncurry and Longridge, I would suggest, and perhaps even in our northwestern area, but that's a good thing for us and a bad thing for them. They choose to go it alone. So I think that probably reflects a very continued, like, it's not a direct Aramac Muddaborough thing, but it just probably reflects that there's a lot of concerted effort going into eradication of dogs now that those fences are up. I'm just talking anecdotally to a few trappers around, my own included, who lives at Ilfracombe. The numbers of dogs inside those larger clusters is dwindling fast, and there's significant bounties actually by the clusters themselves are chipping in because it's down to like one dog or two dogs. So just commenting there that if you look at a map which is around, and I'll ask for, if you haven't already got it, I'll circulate it to you, of all the fencing that's now done, both private and through the 6 rounds. Geographically, this wouldn't surprise you, but Barcaldine Regional Council has more area behind fence than any other, and more individual properties behind fence. So I just note that in other council areas that like 28 scalps in Longridge was really surprising for me. Not as a number, but in comparison to 350 for Barcaldine and 350 for Winton. They're not the pests in the southwest that they are elsewhere. Just Just an interesting observation before Friday's meeting. Speaking of which, did you get in these costings? You spoke to me. 372, can somebody please move the MCDA report be received, please? Councillor Arthur, Councillor Hanson. Those in favour? Sorry, we're not receiving the report there. That is, sorry, my mistake. There's a decision here, let's go through it. Paula, lead us through this. You will have had no doubt conversation regarding this.
Yes, so after the MCDA meeting, they've just put a couple of requests in there, and I've only just picked out the major ones that sort of need council support there, and the others that I can probably, or the deputy CEO the acting CEO, can deal with.
The plywood cutout?
So yeah, basically they just want to put a plywood cutout there in front of the rock wall, I guess where the sand section is at the MIC building. I don't see any real problem with it. It's a local artist that's done the cutout.
Oh, so it's already...
Yeah, I don't have a picture of anything of it. They haven't put it there or anything, but they have cut it out. So if the council says no there, they will probably just put it somewhere else.
Okay, so my next question is how much is it going to cost and who's going to do it? But no, it's already done and built. Okay, councillors, thoughts?
Yep.
Yes.
I have a similar question, Mr. Mayor, and whether long term something more durable than plywood. But if it's already done for plywood, and I guess in the short to medium term we can see how that goes, and then if it's popular, I sort of envisage maybe something made out of corten that goes sort of with the fern plating sort of thing as well,
Yep.
and it's a little bit more durable and might not want to stick your head through it in January or early February, but for the majority of the tourist season it should be all right.
Just like
early.
painted.
Councillor Arthur?
No, I'm good.
I've said my piece, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Hanson, are you right with this?
I'm right, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gleeson, are you right with the plywood cutout?
I'm under the same as Councillor Arthur. Having plywood, but anyway, if they that's to no cost of us, they just wanted to do it, don't they? Yeah.
Councillor Rogers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I agree with Dan. Councillor Arthur, if it's popular, we could look at maybe doing something more durable than plywood, but at this point I think it's a great idea.
Right, here you go. Paula, next one.
The MCDA was actually a grant application for a shade structure. We did look at that grant that's just come up, the active game, but I think it's not really full shade so much, it's only lighting and surfaces. So, it didn't fit into the other grant application that was up either. So yeah, MCDA will source funding from somewhere, probably Sport and Rec, I'd imagine. And yeah, they just wanted to know if council would support them in that. If there was a shortfall, I think they can apply up to 35,000, and they're just waiting on a quote back from Taylor Aquatics, I believe, to see what the price would be.
So the Gambling Community Benefit Fund, I've got no problem. Number one stated goal is to support local government. So perhaps it may be better if local government lodges the application on their behalf, considering we own the asset.
Who does the grant application, Mr. Mayor?
That's what I'm saying. We do it. Council does it. Council, even if somebody else does it, physically it goes in the name of BRC.
So again, community grant applications.
Community Gambling Fund, I was advised last year, it's predominant responsibility. Local governments get funding priority over all groups are put in. Provided you meet the criteria for what it's for, like community benefits, not to offset us putting a sewage treatment plant in or something, but local government, community, sporting type, community cultural, that's what it's number one go-to is. So I've got no problem with it. Just the question is, councillors, about the shortfall in funding.
So they're not expecting it to be a large amount, maybe 3,000 to 5,000 was what they were thinking, but I just need a commitment, I guess, from council to go ahead with the application. If we go the other way and put it in through community gambling fund, and there might be more funds in community gambling fund, is there? 50,000?
I thought that I thought 35 was the upper limit.
No, they've changed the rules now. So once a year they have $100,000 round, and then the other 3 rounds are 35,000.
Right. So are we in the once a year?
I think that's the first one of the year.
Through you, Mr Mayor, February 28th is the super round, they call it. So that's up to $100,000.
Are we better waiting till then?
It's not that far away.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on the quote. It shouldn't be far, so we will, that will determine.
Well, through you, Mr Mayor, there's a normal 5,000.
Given that we're I think Bill is open in the off season probably, or they hope, So really, if we would do the 28th, we get successful notification. If it's going to cost a little bit more, we're better off going for the one where we can get the full amount funded through the grant.
Well, we'll do probably the end of this week, I'm hoping, so how much we're up for. I can bring that back to next meeting if you like.
Please. Let's put it in through so we don't object to that. We do the grant or they do, but we've got no problem with that shade structure going over the shallow end, do we?
No.
Right, next point.
It was just to allow the CEO to the Union Camp, the street beautification brushes. So the Union Camp is just a new idea for Muttaburra. They're going to go away and do a concept plan and actually have a proper think about what they want there. The street beautification, we have had one meeting about that, but it hasn't progressed just because we don't really have the funds. I haven't sourced the gravel, the different sorts of rocks that they want. It's quite a big project and we don't really have the staff to do that. And then the Muttaburra brochures, MCDA always prints their own brochures and they have Barcaldine Regional Council on the back page as a sponsor. So I think I'm just asking if you're happy to still be a sponsor for that, and when that comes about, they'll ask separately for some funding for that.
For those councillors who didn't have the good fortune of being at Muttaburra for the opening of the Interpretation Centre, the MCDA certainly publicly gave voice to their next project, and I nominated Councillor Arthur to the President of MCDA as somebody to chew their ear about on that, because he's very passionate about that Union Camp as well. So,
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think it's got some real potential with ties back to the Tree of Knowledge and some of our other tourist attractions. And
couldn't agree with you more. It's a direct link. They were only there so they didn't get rounded up or left here. So we're happy with that. Item C there, just the CEO to look into the Union Camp and some street beautification.
Yep.
That Muttaburra brochures was raised during the staff consultation with you, wasn't it, on the sidelines of that? So it's not news to you. Right, so we're comfortable with all of those.
And I went to the street beautification meeting.
Right. Trees involved?
Trees and rocks.
There's plenty of one of them two things around Muttaburra anyway.
There's no stones around Muttaburra.
Right, can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Gleeson moves, a seconder. Councillor Rogers. Those in favour? 7-0. 381. If somebody moves that, we received Jenny's Buckhalden area report. Councillor Peoples, seconded Councillor Plum. Those in favour? 7-0. Jenny.
I don't really have any other input to go into there, except the Westec Field Days was very successful. The numbers through the gates might have been down, but the exhibitors were very happy that it did proceed. But there's just one thing I would like to add, and it's to do with a drought-affected farmers event that's happening here at the Barcaldine Showground next Wednesday, the 22nd, from 7:30am till 11:30am. It's just about supporting farmers in need, and there's quite a few different groups coming out that will be available there for farmers to talk to. There is stuff being given away to farmers that they had to register for, so I just thought I would alert that to the attention of council as well.
I've certainly been trying to do some work to promote that, but unfortunately I don't know that there's going to be a very high attendance at either here or Muttaburra, Aramac, Alpha. I think it's going to struggle. Just before I move to questions, on behalf of Council, Jenny, your Barcaldine area staff and staff all over that have contributed, but thank you very much. Westec Field Days was a very good success. Everybody that attended must have driven 2 cars here, because I don't know if I've ever seen so many cars parked adjacent to the showground. So even if gate numbers were down, there was certainly considerable visitor traffic to the community. The volunteer organisation, Westec itself, that ran the event, did a sterling job. Talking to exhibitors in my couple of days there, they just loved it. They thought it was fantastic. A lot of really good business, prolonged conversations with people, which if you're at a rushed, more densely populated field day is difficult, because they're trying to serve you as quickly as they can and move on to the next customer. So I would imagine there'll be some extensive business opportunities arise from it. But our staff, your staff, have done a really good job in getting the facility ready and very quickly returned to normal use, and accommodating a late edition of an event, which was the rescheduled Virtual Cup to Barcaldine. Everybody could attend that. I think it was a good event to have on for people that were already in town for Westec. But the staff did a very good job in supporting what is, one of our major feature community events. So well done. Questions, please. Okay. 382. Just might reflect, please, that the acting CEO left the room. Jenny, would you like to just briefly summarise this? Well, I suppose you already have. Does anyone have any questions for Jenny behind what's in that background material? Beyond, sorry. Do I have a mover? Councillors Plum and Hanson, second. Debate? Those in favour? 7-0. Right. He probably thought he was going to get to make a dozen phone calls, well, it hasn't happened. It's like those of you that take your phone or something to read outside, you just get into the first page of it when you're out, and then, oh, in you come. 383. Councillors, this has been on my whiteboard for some time, and for a number of reasons has not actually been able to happen, but it has happened. I asked officers to undergo community consultation, specifically with the, in focus in that was the caravan park operators, given the potential for impact. We received considerable correspondence and verbal discussion individually and collectively last year around the shutdown period interfering with visitation to or utilisation of the showgrounds during October, which last year would have been a very substantial month and this year potentially stands to be as well. We moved an urgent resolution at that time to extend. We did miss a month. So the consultation that officers undertook with the caravan park operators was around if the park was to remain shut from, instead of the policy currently saying 1 October to 28 February, that it will move to, those dates would move to 1 December to 31 January. So that's shortening that shutdown period by 2 months. 2 months. 1 at the start and 1 at the end. Sorry, 3 months. 2 at the start and 1 at the end. Oh no, sorry. It's just 2 at the start and a few days at the end. Sorry, but no, it's 2 months. 2 months total. The park operators have got in the material that you have in front of you their thoughts. We've heard the feedback from the businesses in the main street. Sorry, they're not all main street businesses, that's not fair. Some of them were located outside of that. But feedback was that their presence there gave everyone an equal opportunity at attracting that business. So I'm now just presenting that's the only change in the policy, is that correct? Only proposed change?
Yes.
Okay.
So the caravan park owners, the 3 commercial owners, 2 came to the meeting and the other one I spoke to afterwards. Their position hasn't changed. So their view is that the showground should be closed right up till the 1st of May and then open from May, 1st of May to 30th of September and closed again. So they're not budging on their opinion. So really it was really all they're doing is confirming or reaffirming that that was their position.
Right, councillors. Councillor, please.
Mr. Mayor, I know I haven't looked at the council at our council charges. I probably should have done before I asked the question. But are our council charges cheaper or dearer than
Same price as the dearest.
Yeah.
Or the cheapest. Well, we're no cheaper than the commercial parks.
Yeah,
I'll answer it that
right.
way. We can't be.
That's what my next thing was to be. Really open all year. I'd like it open all the time. Open it all year round, but our prices be over and above the caravan park.
The reason for the proposed shutdown is to eliminate the need for us to have cleaning staff
over the Christmas break.
And people checking people are paying and that sort of stuff over the shutdown. Obviously, we're a few weeks either side of that, but that allows for those jobs to be tidied up on the lead in, and it also means that our shutdown day can move 2, 3, 4, 5 days year on year, whereas the 1st of December is the same date every year. We move to a shutdown basis, then So that's for simplicity. That's why that would be presented from 1 to 31.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. 1 or 2 things I did note, and I don't know whether there's a material change, but the policies, the DERM policies that we refer to in our showgrounds policy have changed. They've changed in name. I couldn't find the old versions to see whether there was a material change. So instead of that PUX
901,
102 and 209, they are now SLM 2013 493 and SLM 2013 490. But I don't know if there's a material change in that those operational policies from DERM or, well, on there it's natural resources, mines and energy, but now it falls under natural resources, doesn't it?
Just resources.
Resources, sorry. My apologies.
Department of Resources.
Yeah.
To you, Mr Mayor, I have noted, because this updated policy was done in 2019 and those changes were January 2020, I've noted that they need to be changed.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor, because I couldn't find the old one. I couldn't tell whether there was a material change or it's just been rebranding and updating.
There was a further reference to that at 5.1. I think that's it. Oh no, sorry, duration of stay on the top of page 4. Okay, Councillor Plum.
I agree with this disclosure from the 1st of December to the 31st of January.
Councillor Arthur, other than the technical changes?
And it doesn't preclude us from closing it early.
No.
It just allows us to open to the extent of those dates.
That's right.
No.
If there's an operational reason why, if people are short-staffed and we need to move, then it just shuts. Yeah.
Or we've had 2 weeks of
Wet weather.
Or no one staying there, and no, that's right. Yeah.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not 100% sure, but going back quite a few years when all this sort of started with the caravan parks, I believe the council was forced to actually open and close at certain dates. I don't know if that is correct or not, but it's just a question, were we actually told by the Ombudsman that we could only open and close at certain dates or not? Or was that entirely up to us?
I think, Mr Mayor, that was a compromise position at the time.
So that's no longer effective to us?
It wasn't stipulated by us. I think council itself compromised that to break bread, make peace. The bits we were stipulated on were no laundromat and couldn't be any cheaper than the other parks.
No advertising.
Oh, and we're not supposed to advertise it.
Well, I've got no objections to it being open at that particular time, so it was just a question I need to ask.
No worries. Councillor Rogers?
I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gleeson?
I'm happy to go with it. I've asked the question and you've answered. Thank you.
I'll find Mr Mayor.
Okay, I'll move that then, please. Seconder? Councillor Hanson? Debate? There being none, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Peters?
Yeah, I'll go.
Sorry, I missed it. 7-0. I was looking at Councillor Rogers. Thank you very much, officers, for your consultation in that field on behalf of council and your reporting back to us. 391. Is there anything Angela needs to lead us through, or have we done enough of that yesterday? We can just receive the report. Can somebody move that we receive the report, please? Councillor Arthur and Councillor Plum. Yes, it was the councillor sitting to your right, Councillor Hanson. That time I wasn't taking your raised hand. Those in favour? 7-0. Questions, please, to any of this?
Through you, Mr Mayor, just a comment on the Cut Loose Theatre production. It was a pretty good show.
It was?
Yeah.
Good.
It was well choreographed, well presented. Yeah, it was good.
Very good. All right. 411. Questions on notice. Responses, councillors, to your queries from August or any outstanding queries from July. Are there any Is there any follow-up to any of that you would like more information about, or do we move to, before we move to today's question?
Yes, briefly, with regards to the query that I raised with the complaint about the cars on the square allotment, and it says this was explained that council's local resort relating to an untidy allotment and encroaching on the footpath. So I didn't understand anything about the untidy allotment before. It was about cars being on that block.
So, yeah, it was about untidy being cars, part of the way they were parked, plus the overgrown allotment. That's what I understand it was. However, there have been further complaints about that parcel of land,
Right.
which may result in other action being taken. So we need further advice on that. Because every vacant parcel of land requires a material change of use if the use is going to change from being vacant to something else. If it's a house, a dwelling, it's self-assessable under the planning scheme. If it complies with all our planning codes, but any other use of the land triggers a planning approval.
So park some cars on the square allotment there is got to have an MCU.
Well, it might trigger that. And considering that one of his competitors purchased a parcel of land and obtained an MCU to park cars on, we can't treat him differently to the other business.
So anyone in our shire now that's got a square allotment, they put a car on it, they've got to come and get an MCU. That's ridiculous. Really.
Probably the difference between parking a car on it and using it as a parking lot for a business.
The word is material change.
So what's it, 2 cars, you've got to get an MCU.
Yeah, keep going, Brett.
Well, it's material change of use, so it's, is it 10% of the land, or, it's a matter of judgment, but once you substantially change the use of the land, it requires an MCU, and that's always been the case. It's the rules haven't changed. Council may have chosen not to enforce that in the past, but that's the law.
So we as a council are enforcing it now.
Well, if we receive a complaint, we have to act on it and comply with the requirements of the law, which are state laws. We don't, the state creates the planning laws. We have a planning scheme which is in compliance with those laws.
What would an MCU look like to do this? Or what would the process, how involved the process? Would it be a code accessible, impact accessible?
I don't know, and I don't even know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the added complexity is the owner is not the current user, really. So it would be, you would think, some sort of commercial arrangement to manage that MCU if that arrangement was to go further. It's similar, I guess, with the MCU with selling industrial land that's zoned industrial but has never had a use before.
In grassland. Yeah, it's the same thing.
But this is more complex because it's a residential area, and land in a residential area being converted to industrial, which doesn't comply with their zone.
So has he got a service day? He's got a mechanic shop or something next door in the residential area?
So that's like having horse stables in a residential area. It's existing use.
Well, there's complexities there as well.
Like,
I'm not going to say on camera. I don't think it is.
but basically, if you've got something like your zonage is one thing. It's just like our office is in a residential area as well, but its existing use has been as a commercial office building. So it's you're not changing the use of that. Even if we change the zonage of that area in the new planning scheme to industrial, we can still continue, just like the residences in the main street that are, or in Oak Street, sorry, are still residences. They can still continue to act in a commercial area or in a mixed use or whatever, because their pre-existing use is as that. So that there's the pre-existing use will override changes to the planning scheme. It's just when you go to change something that you may you then have to assess according to the zoning you're in, not necessarily your existing use, but you can continue to do what you've been doing, provided you don't change that.
Our planning scheme allows the change from one commercial use to another commercial use without having an MCU. So if you're in the commercial zone, you sell your business and someone else puts in a different business, it's changed from one commercial use to the other. That's allowable.
However, if you bought a commercial building and turned it into a residence, you would need to undertake a MCU, or vice versa. You bought a residence and wanted to turn it into a business, you would need to undertake an MCU, whether it be a hair salon and there's some minor businesses that trigger varying stages of that from depending on their impact.
So to park cars on a residential lot, you need an MCU, but all of us park cars on a residential lot anyway. I do. I've got 3 on my house, Rockman's does. We all park cars on our residential lots.
But the use of that, the material use of that land is your residence. It's not parking cars. Parking cars is ancillary to the use, whereas this is the opposite.
To give you an example, Councillor Peebles, if you were in an area where parking was at a premium and you established a car park and you charged people for the privilege of charging in your yard, you would need to undertake an MCU, yes.
Yeah, I understand that, but that's not the case we're talking about here. This is just
So I'll give you
it's not a residence.
A real example is when GBO was in the other offices, in the office that we're in, and they bought that land next door to use as car parking for their business, and council rejected the application because
Inconsistent
it
use.
was inconsistent use. So they had to park on the street.
Whereas obviously when they developed the building where they are now, they had an integrated car parking. There's car parks integrated within their office precinct rather than the sole use of the block.
Without opening a can of worms, the other building on the Lands Road got 35 motor cars out the back. What's the difference? Just that there hasn't been a complaint. That'd be residential, wouldn't it?
No, that's a mixed use zone along the highway. Yeah, that's mixed use.
Purple hash.
Sorry?
I'm just looking at the map in my mind. It's purple hash, which is mixed use, commercial and residential.
It's in the line there, you've got the purple.
And he has purchased parcel of land in the industrial area for parking cars and obtained
He purchased that lock out there recently. But I'm talking. So the person that Councillor People is talking about, if even if that person leased the block off the owner, he would still have to change the. Oh, he can't change it.
He could apply to.
He could apply to change it.
He can apply.
Even on a lease. If you leased a block, you'd have to own the block, wouldn't you?
Somebody would have to apply, whether it's him or the owner of the block, but you can apply. It's not a locked up process. It's not like you can't ask a question. It may not even be impact accessible. It probably wouldn't be. It would be just code accessible. Do you meet the requirements for change?
And it may be that you just have to put a coloured bond fence around the land for the aesthetics, so people can't see the cars. That may be the requirement, I don't know.
Any further inquiries or questions to follow up from the questions that are on notice here already before we go to new ones?
Mr. Mayor, the question that I asked about the old existing water feature, it's just because the people haven't, Labor, it was supposedly being filled in and that, a month ago, and still nothing's been done there. Is that only just a labour shortage, workplace shortage, you would think, or not?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is, and we're just waiting for the return of the staff member to get that happening.
Councillor Hanson, would you like to lead us to this month's question? Lead off with this month's question, please.
There's, I handed out before a letter from the Buckle and Golf Club, which is self-explanatory. They're just looking for the council would be able to clean up around the boundary fence, which I believe is a road access between the pony club there as well. And they've got sort of 3 major events coming up in the next 12 to 18 months, and they're just sort of looking for a possibility of having it cleaned up so they can present it and maintain it a bit easier.
I think there's a question there on notice. The officers can take that and have a look at what the implications financially and operationally are about doing that. If they need a resolution from a budget point of view, they can come to a future meeting. We've got the request very clear here. I'll leave that to officers to have a look at the possibility.
Just point out the land between the golf course and the pony club, well, that main way is actually pony club land, so there's no actual road through, official road, so their boundaries they've got the same boundary. Someone's created a lane like that that belongs to the pony club.
Which lane, sorry?
Thank you, Sir. Sure, the council can still look at it. I'll walk on it.
Distance.
Yeah, here. That line. So that's not a road. No, that's what it stops there. Right, that's the end of the road.
There's just a bit of a drive there.
Can I have somebody move that we receive those responses? Sorry. Councillor Arthur, seconded. Councillor Plum. Those in favour? Carried. We'll have a look at what can be done. Well, I've asked the officers to look into what can be done there to tidy that up, even if it's not a roadway or whatever. There might be something we can do as periodically there, especially for major events, just to present that area. We'll have a look at what the budget implications are and come back. Right, Councillor Plum, questions?
Yeah, I have some, just under the WestTech umbrella. I didn't know whether to bring this up for general manager's report, but very much to thank the council for providing such lovely grounds, and that was the feedback as the Mayor said in that report. just a few things. The sheep removing toilets once again on Tuesday morning. Had to be fixed again. So really, we need to do something about this, just in case Westec goes ahead in 2 years. You know, it's just becoming a bad area.
So on that point, I've had some discussions with officers about it. I think the chief thing that needed fixing was just pumping out because it was too full, wasn't it? Anyway, councillors, we at the last budget process knocked on the head the idea of portable toilets because we didn't think they were cheap enough or dear enough or good enough or whatever. I think we should add them back to the list to consider in the next budget process because a block of toilets is $500,000 and every single showgrounds we've got to do with more. So we either look at building more or we look at the costs about getting more of those portable 3 or 4 toilets of each, whatever. Let's look at more than just one option this time. Let's get a whole array of big, little, large shower and toilet, separate toilet, shower. Let's get a whole suite of costings so that we can have something on hand for our significant events, whether it be Westec, Barkey Show, races, whatever. Well, Muttaburra is a severe deficiency. We've attempted a number of times to replace that and been unsuccessful with grants, whereas if we had portable toilets and showers, we could at least reinforce that community.
So it's saying that with 1,400 people through the gate on Tuesday and 1,760 through the gate on Wednesday, and a reduced number of site people, we don't have enough toilets over there.
I know.
So if we were to look at 2008, we said 2008, which was our biggest, there was 2,500 through the gate approximately each day. So a facility can't cope with it, really.
All the more reason to have more facilities available, and if those facilities can be shared with other grounds, this makes all the more sense.
Yeah. The good shed, we need to possibly take some money in the budget to either upgrade it or do something with it.
Good question to ask officers. I did suggest to senior executive members of Westec that maybe a joint project, considering Westec are one of the predominant users of that shed, but it does have other uses and it is a council asset. But a joint project between Westec and council would be a very good idea.
Yep. I've got a meeting, so I'll take that. And the third...
Those executives will remember very clearly that I said that. They may choose to forget, but they know.
And the third was as a breach in lockdown with COVID. So if we're in lockdown, right, so with COVID over there, the camp draft fence is not a security fence across the southern side between the council security fence and the start of how you go. On the southern side of council, then we have the camp draft, the radio arena, and then we have the split. The security people said that, and the police said that isn't security, isn't secure. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I can't see the correlation between what our fence is constructed like and COVID.
Well, people can get through it. People can go through those yards. People can get through the yards, and it's not what you call a secure area.
I think, Mr Mayor, it minimises the ability for people to be tracked going through a singular or two main entrances.
You just mean the actual back of the cattle yard from the loading red towards the SES?
Yeah, in that area there needs to be secured in an event where you've got to lock the grounds down.
All right, officers, question. Take on notice what can be done, what needs to be done.
So if we go, if you have anything over there that needs to be locked down, then they have said to us it's not secure.
Okay.
That's me.
Councillor.
Not at this point, Mr Mayor.
Only this the golf?
Yeah, just the golf club, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gleeson.
No, Mr Mayor, just to ask the question again. We knocked it on the head there a long time back about the buildings in the Aramac sports area. We were going to, the persons that we're going to do something with it doesn't look as though it's going to happen. There was going to be a road rest that there, and those buildings were earmarked to be sold or taken away. And and the old toilet block there. I'm just wondering whether we should go and go back to look at that again.
Quickly, councillors, and give voice to whether you think we should look at that again, save the officers wasting their time if you don't.
Sure.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the old toilet block will be removed when the tourist season is over, and that's a very, very old toilet block, and the second toilet block will be taken to the base fairly soon.
It's been in the past resolution given to the race club.
Yeah.
And the other toilet block there, on the old block there, Mr Mayor, if Councillor Gleeson wants to put it up for tender again, I think just put it up for tender.
All right, officers can deal with that then. Councillor Peebles. Or Councillor Gleeson, do you have more?
No, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
No, Mr Mayor, I just glad I had a quick word this morning about some of those roads over there. We're still going to have a look at them when we get the time.
Yeah. Right, very good.
Councillor Rogers.
Oh, Councillor Rogers, sorry. For the first time today, I've forgotten you. My apologies.
That's okay, Mr Mayor. The only thing that was brought up to me this time was a few people who would like the date of the gardening competition to be later due to them not having their flowers out at such an early date.
Yeah, I had that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of that every year, actually.
Yeah.
It does form a reasonable part of our discussion as to when to have it. A couple of times I've been involved, Mr Mayor, yeah.
Noted, Councillor Rogers, that will form part of the debrief for the garden comp. The officer for that is just out of the room, but we'll make sure that's noted for her.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rogers, did you want to discuss the community feedback regarding the Jericho public holiday?
I got an email, I think Councillor Plum and yourself as well, wanting or expressing interest in us having another survey, or like maybe at the community consultation again, like we did previously, asking for community feedback, as there's some people who might want a different date.
Yep, that's the gist of it, the way I read the email as well. But just a member of the public.
I did, I replied to that community member and told them that we would discuss that and get back to them, so.
Very good. We'll note the concern around communication on the date of the Jericho show holiday, and we will seek to talk to that community through our consultation.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the one thing too, I think it might need more, they might need time to consider it, like, because sometimes when something is just sprung on the whole community at a meeting, they haven't had time to think about what they want to do on that holiday. So I'm not sure whether we could possibly let people know to start thinking about it, or contact the different clubs as well, just so they can start thinking about whether they do want to have an event or what date suits them best. Mr Mayor?
Very good.
But, Mr Mayor, just noting that next year is locked in, so any consultation would be for future years. Because they're gazetted by the government. You'd have to have a good reason to change it.
Councillor Gleeson.
Mr Mayor, is it Councillor
Rogers.
Councillor Rogers? Is
Is
Councillor
she?
Rogers finished?
Yes, she is.
Mr Mayor, I don't know whether this should be recorded, but I just want to ask a question on the open meeting. The road, the Hewenden Road, has work commenced or look like going to be commenced in the very near future?
Through you, Mayor. I spent a considerable amount of time trying to chase this down. In a nutshell, it will start on Monday and will finish 8 days after. That's this Monday, 8 days after.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Nothing further? Declare the meeting shut at 2:16.